4 months ago, I had $60,000 in debt, and right now, I have zero. So today, we're going to explain how that happened.
All right, let's jump right into it.
What is going on, everyone? We hope you are all having a fantastic day. So, in previous videos, you may have heard me talk about my fiancé, and I've never actually had her in a video before, but we just finished paying off nearly $60,000 of student loan debt in just 4 months, and after bribing her with some Dunkin' Donuts gift cards, I felt like she should at least come on camera for a second to say hello, considering she's a huge part of this story. So today we're going to break down the whole process of paying off nearly $60,000 of debt in 4 months, including breaking down all of the numbers, explaining how and why we paid this off so quickly, why I decided to help her with her debt journey, considering we're not yet married, because I am sure that will be a controversial topic in the comment section, and ultimately give you some hope if you are watching this and currently have what feels like an insurmountable amount of student loan debt. So I've talked about my college finances in previous videos, but long story short, I went to an in-state college, I was a resident assistant, I had a number of scholarships, and I'm not gonna lie to you, I was incredibly blessed that my parents helped me pay for a large chunk of my schooling as well. Make of that what you want, but I assure you I am not a trust fund baby, as nice as that would be, and I did everything that I possibly could when I was in school to graduate early and minimize the cost of my education. But that is enough about me. Erin, how much student debt do you have?
$58,635.01.
And she still was an RA, had many on-campus jobs and scholarships, went to an in-state school, and it still cost that much. And also, you are totally cool with me talking about this and breaking down all of the numbers?
Yeah.
And I didn't bribe you to come here?
No.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep. All right, so the first point that I want to talk about is in reference to what we just said, and that is honestly a terrible part of the current education system here in the US at least, and that is that Erin went to an in-state school, worked as an RA, and all of those things that I just mentioned, and she graduated on time, yet it still cost nearly $60,000. And I fully recognize that that is a lot of debt for some people, that is nothing for others, and that is completely okay. But I think we can all agree that based on that information that I just laid out, it's kind of horrifying that this still costs 60 grand, because short of going to a local community college and living at home, which, by the way, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that, there really isn't any way to do this for much cheaper, depending on what state you live in. I do also want to be open and honest from the start that if looking at the raw numbers, yes, I did help pay a lot of that debt off, and I'm fully aware that that is going to be a hot topic for a number of reasons. So I'll talk more about my justification behind that decision in a second, but I first want to make it crystal clear that while I may have made a direct financial contribution, that absolutely does not mean that I paid for my soon-to-be wife's college. That would be an incredibly inaccurate and false statement and completely discredit the hard work and effort that she put in order to lower the cost of her schooling as much as possible. By deciding to go to an in-state school rather than a private institution that could have easily cost 60 grand per year, that easily saved over $100,000 or more, and by working as a resident assistant, she got free room and board and saved over $10,000 from that alone, plus she had a million different jobs that entirely paid for her housing and food. And long story short, she put in way more effort to fund her education than I ever did. Now, I do want to talk about why I made the decision to help her pay off her student loans prior to us getting married, and I promise I am going to get to that. But I'm sure a lot of you want to see the breakdown of all of the numbers and understand how and why we decided to pay off that debt in such a short period of time. So the grand total of all of the student loan debt that we're talking about today is $58,635.01. That came in the form of $30,008.75 in private loans and $23,420.69 in federal loans. Now, as many of you may know, federal loans have been paused in terms of payments and interest rates for both subsidized and unsubsidized loans. However, those unsubsidized loans did still accrue interest prior to that student loan pause, and obviously the private loans have been accruing interest throughout the past several years, despite the current pandemic and subsequent pause in student loan payments. So the reason I mention that is because of that grand total that I just mentioned, there is a few $1,000s of interest baked into that, but a majority of that total is made up of strictly principal. Now, in terms of paying off that grand total, it really is broken down into 3 payment categories. First, we made a payment back in August of 2021 for $30,008 $1,000,000.75, which was entirely focused on the private loans. And the rationale there was that federal loan interest rates were paused, plus the rate on federal loans are typically lower than private loans. So if we had to choose between the two, we decided to pay off the private loans first. The second payment came just 4 months later in the amount of $23,420.69 and was entirely focused on the federal loans. And we actually decided to rip the Band-Aid, thinking that the federal student loan pause would be ending at the end of January, and literally the day after we made that payment, it was announced that the pausing of student loan payments and interest would actually be extended for an additional period. And while we were definitely a little bit aggravated about that for a few minutes, in the end, we knew that we were going to have to pay that eventually anyways. So as a huge fan of Dave Ramsey and much of what he teaches, minus credit cards, I guess, we knew that we were going to have to make that payment, so it does still feel like the right decision in the long term. And the third and final category is simply the $5,205.57 in remaining expenses for her final semester of school that we will just pay out of pocket, which brings the grand total to that $58,635.01. Now, I can't talk about the government and student loans without addressing the very hot topic issue of whether or not the current administration can or will forgive any amount of student loan debt. Well, I will say right from the start that number one, this channel is not political in any way, and I'm always going to keep it that way. And number two, no one can predict the future on whether or not this truly can and will happen. I know there has been a ton of chatter about $10,000 of loans being forgiven or some other random number that have been thrown around, and while that possibly could happen, we just felt that if we had the ability right now to make that payment and just make it go away, then it's probably best for us in the long term instead of just sitting around and hoping for someone else to pay it off for us. Could the current administration forgive $10,000 of student loans or more? Probably. And if that happens, will we be kicking ourselves that we paid it off early? Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, we probably will. But again, in my opinion, it felt like the right decision for us, but that doesn't necessarily mean that that is the right strategy for you. So that's just a decision that everyone is going to have to weigh the different options and the possibilities in the future and make that decision on their own. Alright, so with that whole story and the numbers broken down, let's circle back to the hot topic issue of why in the world did I pay off $60,000 of debt for someone whom I am not yet married to or legally binded to in any way, shape, or form. Now, if you're scratching your head thinking, why is that such a big deal? Well, first of all, good for you. But to give you some perspective, here's what Dave Ramsey has to say about that exact topic.
When you're not married, it's two separate entities. So you guys are running in two separate lanes. It's your debt, it's her debt. There's no we in the mix with the money situation. So keeping it kind of black and white. And then once you do get married, everything's combined. Whether it's income, debt, all the above.
So obviously, I went with the direct opposite of what many financial and legal experts would recommend, and I fully understand that a lot of you may rip me apart in the comment section, saying that that is an absolutely ridiculous and stupid thing to do, and you're allowed to feel that way and express your opinion. But again, I would say this is a very personal decision, regardless of anyone's financial situation, including my own. And while the moral and relational factors that went into that decision are between my fiance and I, from a financial perspective, here is my argument. I've known for years that when I married Erin someday, that was probably going to come with some amount of student loan debt, and I accepted that a long time ago, and I'm completely okay with that. And we actually started having conversations about that a long time ago, and that meant that I started setting money aside in a catered investment account that I would eventually use to pay off that debt. Now, as the date of when we would actually need that money has gotten closer, I have adjusted that portfolio significantly in order to reduce the risk, just as an older individual typically takes on less risk in their retirement investments as they get closer to retirement because they have less time to recover should anything go wrong in the market. So because I had adjusted that portfolio to be higher in bonds and lower in stocks and equity, meaning it is less volatile and therefore hopefully less risky, that meant that eventually it got to the point where the interest rate on Erin's student loans would actually be higher than the return that we were earning on that very conservative investment portfolio. And for that reason and that reason alone, at least from a financial perspective, is why I decided to get rid of those loans prior to us getting married in just a few months. So make of that what you want, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on that topic down in the comment section below, because again, I fully recognize that that may have not been the right financial or legal decision, but it felt right in my heart and mind, and that is why we went ahead and made that decision for our financial situation. So I get that that wasn't your typical Dave Ramsey debt payoff story where we both worked 12 jobs and ate beans and rice for 3 years just so we could somehow emerge debt-free and stronger than ever, and I'm sorry if you clicked on the video expecting that. But what I will say is, despite the fact that I do have a full-time job, it really is thanks to all of you, my YouTube audience, that allowed me to even think about paying off this student debt early, and all of the other exciting things that we have coming for the future of this YouTube channel. So seriously, from Aaron and I both, thank you so much for continuing to support this content and watching all of these videos. This was definitely a very different style of video than what we usually talk about here on the channel, but as always, if you did get value out of this content and you want to help support me, the easiest way to do that is actually by checking out some of my favorite financial tools down in the description below, including one offer from the Point Cashback debit card that will currently give you $100 for free when you open your account and make your first purchase. So definitely check that out using the link down below. Be sure to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel for more content like this in the future. And of course, thank you so much for your time. I really do appreciate it so much. Take it easy, and I'll see you in the next one.